It's been a while, but we are finally back, again as I mentioned in every video today. Having been sick, it kind of put a damper on the upload schedule, but damn it, we're back. Although, that said, this is the third video that I'm recording tonight. This might be a shorter episode because I can kind of feel my voice getting a tiny bit weak. That said, we are ready for another season, the 2031 season. That is ridiculous that we have been at the helm of the Reds for as long as we have, and this year, of course, we look to build upon the prior two seasons, back-to-back 90-plus win years. This year, the goal is simple: make it back into the playoffs and make it at least beyond the NLDS for the first time. Now, the roster is set up. There were numerous players who were worthy of having a spot on the Major League roster, but unfortunately, not everybody could make it. That said, because of that fact, we are stacked and the number one team in baseball, at least in terms of ranking, and not to mention, the prospect pool is still ridiculous with Orlando Rosas, who is down in Double-A actually. But at the Major League level, Tom Lau and Clyde Martin are sticking around. Henry Lewis is down in AAA, and I actually haven't looked at this list. We have Eric Valencia, who is in AAA this season as well, and I'm going to guess he is the final one. He's not. Russell Zarate, who is also definitely Major League caliber, but had to be sent down. It's a wonderful problem to have. This is the rotation and the pitching staff in general, as we have established it for the start of the year. Steve Carrasco, now at 25 years old, still obviously the ace that we were hoping he would be. Joseph Dye is the one that I'm quite concerned about. The 60s for hits and Ks per 9, but he's a bit of a workhorse. I'm going to be very intrigued to see what he can do. Last year, he was fairly solid. Time will tell what we get from him this year. Clyde Martin is finally making his debut at the Major League level. Unfortunately, the stamina for him has never really improved. We'll see what he can do. Try to keep him in the rotation, though. You might notice as well the bullpen's set up to kind of factor that in. Winston Medina is there as well. Had a great year last year, at least in terms of ERA. And Joe Bailey as well, still in the rotation. Obviously, it's the strongest rotation we have had yet. The bullpen, though, capped off by two long relievers at the moment. Domingo Trevino at 25 years old. He had a pretty damn good year last year. I'm a little bit distracted. There's a lovely snowplow outside. That's a bit noisy. But Trevino had a good year last year, but obviously we had to prioritize others. Jason Lord was the Rule 5 pickup that we want to hold on to, thus he has to be in the bullpen this year. The main thing to factor in here is that Domingo Trevino could be sent down. He still has minor league options, and we could call up another true reliever. But for now, this is the setup with Napoleon Gillis, Chris Velez, Bruce Boyle, Norman Garner. Hopefully both get equal utilization. If not, we'll bump one up to the normal side of the bullpen. And Will Vincent as our closer. And as a matter of fact, I'm a little bit worried about one of them not getting the amount of time that they should. I'll keep an eye on that for sure. Again, down in the minors, it's a pretty damn good setup with guys like Valencia and Zarate. Getting to the lineup, and this is where it gets interesting. And this is pretty much the lineup, all throughout. Of course, we're in the NL, but still. Graham Edwards is our leadoff man. Joe Quinlan second up. Not happy about not being a star player. Also not happy about the pay, but he'll get over it. Bobby Bloom and the 3-spot Marlon Pugh still at third. Archie May also not happy about not being a star, but it is what it is. Ramon Vasquez is going to be our DH this season, but obviously there's pressure on him to deliver with Antonio Serrano there, our other Rule 5 pickup. In left, Tom Lau is going to get the opportunity. Bryant Kay at center. Henry Shipman is our catcher yet again with Stephen Booth, Francisco Jimenez, and Josh Rincon on the bench. Not a ton of batting ability outside of Serrano, which means the AAA club is absolutely stacked with Abdul Elam, Alexis Cabrera, Richie McCauley, Fernando Chavez, Nick Lawson, Martin Abreu, Scott Clausen, Ryan Fernandez, and Henry Lewis. I would expect that AAA ball club to compete for a title. to say the least. So that pretty much covers what this squad is looking like for this season. High expectations. I will see you at the draft, perhaps sooner if something more interesting happens. Let's see how the Reds do this year. So yet again, I rejoin you just before a draft in somewhat of a depression, as we are drastically underperforming, 28-30 on the season, currently 7 games back of the division-leading Cardinals. Not great. And I think you can see what the problem is in terms of comparing our runs scored and runs against with St. Louis. Not ideal for the 3rd best pitching staff in the 10th rated defense, yet here we are. So to give you a look at what's going on around the NL so you know what to expect, and that's great to see a former Red up there. Anything over 300 is, of course, phenomenal. And really, anything, 270 is pretty damn good, right? We'll go with that. In terms of home runs, Marlin right now tied for 15, so that's a solid number for us. Marlin also up there for RBI. Stolen bases leader right now is at 19. On base percentage, anything over about a 370 is about the same. Slugging percentage, of course, anything over a 5 is pretty damn good as well. And in terms of ERA, of course, anything under a 4 is pretty damn good. So let's take a look at some of our numbers, shall we? Steve Carrasco has been okay, but that is not ideal for our ace to just be okay. Then you have Joseph Dye, doing pretty damn good. No real complaints. Of course, I could sit here and look at some other numbers. I'll scroll through at the very least at the top with one Steve Carrasco. So that'll be an indication there for him. Joseph Dye, though, in terms of ERA, has been okay. Clyde Martin's been, he's also been okay. Joe Bailey struggling a bit. And Jason Lord, who I actually ended up putting in the rotation, he was doing really well in the bullpen, is still doing really well in the starting 5. In terms of the long relievers, Trevino hasn't been great. And you can see why Winston Medina was taken out of the rotation. Whether or not we drop him or Trevino, I don't know. Medina's 29 and can be dropped. So that's a possibility. We'll take a look at some numbers in AAA here in a moment. Bruce Boyle has finally given up on wanting to be the closer, so we can leave him in the bullpen. In terms of his numbers, pretty damn good, all things considered. Chris Velez, also not too shabby. Napoleon Gillis has been fairly brutal, as has Norman Garner, unfortunately, who has 6 losses on his record in only 20 innings pitched. Not ideal. Will Vincent's been pretty good, all things considered. Only 8 saves on the season, though. He had 53 last year. So there are clear issues. For the record, again, down in AAA, we have the likes of Pedro Rodriguez, who has done, I would say, relatively okay, if we were to judge it by the same numbers. Eric Valencia could also be due for a call-up, but it is extremely frustrating. Of course, in terms of bullpen call-up options, Chad Padilla would be solid. Valazquez, unfortunately, is just a 74. John Johnson's much better than that in terms of overall, as is Russell Zarate or Lincoln Post. So feel free to share your thoughts on what we should do there, but there are obvious issues, and unfortunately the issues don't stop there. We go to the lineup. Graham Edwards, 5 home runs, 34 RBIs, but a 247 average and a 342 on base. I mean, I can't help but be disappointed. A 377, like he had a couple of seasons ago, would be nice. Probably shouldn't be the leadoff man, despite having the best stealing rating between he and Quinlan, who has 4 home runs, 25 RBIs, and a 276 average, 377 on base. So you can make the discussion over, or make the debate over who should have that spot as the leadoff man. It's probably going to go to Quinlan moving forward. Bobby Bloom has at least returned to form, 294 average, 10 home runs, 32 RBIs, so doing relatively well through 58 games played. Marlin as well, you saw him for home runs and RBIs, a 273 average, No complaints. Still ridiculous that he's developed. Archie May, 291 average, 11 home runs, 36 RBIs. Compared to what he did last year, he's on a pretty damn good pace. Not quite MVP caliber, though. Ramon Vasquez, limited appearances as a DH, but he's been pretty damn good, and there's a potential argument for maybe him getting into the lineup. Henry Shipman has been phenomenal so far this season, especially compared to what we've expected from him. He's already matched last year's home run total. Bryant Kay, doing pretty damn well. Again, running him as the leadoff man is risky because we lose someone being able to play in a star development role. The on-base isn't that high, but the speed factor for him is certainly there. And then Tom Lau hasn't been that bad at all as a rookie. Still think it's probably worth playing him in the majors to let him develop here as opposed to sending him down to AAA for one more season. Serrano's only had 3 at-bats, unfortunately, but he is still there. Stephen Booth, Francisco Jimenez, and Josh Rincon. You get a look at their numbers. Don't think we'd call anybody else up. I'd let Richie McCauley just dominate. Again, we're kind of stuck with potential call-up options because of the current Rule 5 situation. I'll leave it up to you. There are certain opinions you could have of how this team is doing, who is underperforming, and certainly what we should look to do moving into the next episode to try and rebound and get back on track. We did win our first or last 2 games prior to this draft. Speaking of which, let's get to it. We have the 27th pick of the first round. I will hopefully remember to take a look around the league. Let's see who we can find, if anybody. So Dennis Ross. Now, there isn't a set plan as far as who we're looking to get here. Ross could be okay, but he's 20 and 4+ years away, as opposed to, this trio of closers who will probably be available later on. But Julio Anaya is pretty damn good, admittedly. 21 years old and is going to be ready next year. Brandon Murray's 24 and is 3 years away, so that's a no-go. And then there's Frank Poirier, who is 2 years away at 23. So if we were going to take anybody out of that group, it would probably be Ross, and then we hope that Anaya would be there later on. Art Huseby. Could be Husebi, perhaps. I'm going to guess it's Huseby. Maybe Husebi. Who knows? His name is Art. And admittedly, he's fairly well-rounded in terms of contact and power, vision, discipline. Not bad. I'm not really won over by anybody yet. You have some well-rounded options, though. Center fielder Ryan Lyle, 4 years away or more. Again, fairly well-rounded. High injury risk, though. We'd avoid him. Brad Nix, 21 years old, ready in 2 years. Ridiculous contact. Everything else is just kind of average, though. Is there anybody who's really going to win us over here? These two are, Enos Alim is 22 and 4+ years away, but Mark Otsuka is 20 years old, and again, fairly well-rounded. Nothing too crazy here, though, and that brings us down to the 75s, where we do have James Dillard. Not bad for a catcher. The Jamaican, James Dillard. I don't know if he's worth taking here. He might be. That's not bad, though. We do kind of need a replacement for Shipman. I don't know if he's the one, but he's not looking all that bad. Is there anybody else who's can't miss here for 75s? Carter Smith, pretty damn strong at the plate. Nothing outrageous, however. Dominic Kang, we can't totally trust that, but it might be worth taking the risk. Francisco Santana, nothing too crazy. What about Barrios? Again, I can't help but think with both Kang and Barrios, with it not being in green, that we can't totally trust those numbers, which is unfortunate because both look great. Kevin Borowitz, not any better than who we had at the top of the list. Mitchell Tackett, the center fielder. The power looking pretty damn good. And then we drop down to Kevin Collier. I'm probably going to go back to the top of the list. Probably going to take... then again, we have so much starting pitching talent. But I'm probably going to take Dennis Ross. And then we'll look from there. So let's go with one Dennis Ross. And we don't have another pick until the end of the second round, 22nd So quite a few players we were looking at are off the board. Anaya is still there, though, which is what I was hoping for. Let's take him. And Jesus Christ, compensation. Wow. Like, I knew we were due for some compensation with who we let go of. I wasn't expecting 3 straight picks and technically 4 picks in between rounds 2 and 3. That is outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. So, who the hell can we get here? Let's take a look at Poirier again, who was 23, 2 years away. It's honestly not bad. Yeah, it's honestly not bad. This 55 is a little bit worrisome, but that could work. Brandon Murray, absolutely not. Carter Smith, again, probably worth it. Francisco Santana had decent power but high injury risk, and without us having a DH full-time, that's probably a no-go. So right now, Poirier and Smith looking pretty good. Or we take the risk on someone like Barrios and Dominic Kang, who is still there, but we can't fully trust those numbers. But this might be the draft to start taking risks. Do we have anybody else here? Alden Castro, same thing. It would be an absolute risk, a guess at best. Coates not looking that good. Leo Navoa. Again, a risk, hoping for the best. Irvin Worth, same thing. No other greens in the 70 range, apparently. Or not. Enriquez? Ooh, Enriquez. I like that contact and discipline, of course. I think we have our 3, and I'm going to go with the greens. We're going to go with Enriquez, Poirier, and Carter Smith, I think was the other one I was really sold by. Delman Lint, which is a hell of a name. Also not that bad. Again, Francisco Santana with that high injury risk. Jacob Childs wasn't anything special. What about Thomas Inoue? Not looking that good either. Carlos Enriquez. So yeah, I think we have Poirier, Enriquez, and Smith. I think those are the guys here. And maybe we can get Lint later. So we'll take another closer. Let's go for Frank Poirier. I'm not completely sold on him. We will take the second baseman, Carter Smith. And with the third of our consecutive picks here, the catcher, Carlos Enriquez. And we will still be able to pick up either Santana or Lint. And I'm gonna go for Lint, just because, again, the high injury risk for Santana, too much of a risk. He ends up going to Toronto. We'll see if that ended up being a mistake. But a lot of selections for us in this draft, and now we get to take the risk with some of these yellow bars. So first up again was Barrios, who's going to be ready in 2 years at 21 years old. Again, the numbers as they stand look great, but we can't totally trust it. Navoa, also not looking that bad, 18. Actually, in fairness, Barrios is ready in 2 years. Navoa's ready in 3 at 18 years old, which is pretty damn solid. And then there was Irvin Worth, who is not on the same level. Barrett Schneider, also not quite on the same level. So it comes down to the top 2, and I think I'm going to take Barrios because of that higher potential, but I feel like Navoa at 18 might be a safer bet. 150 and 165, the rest are 70 pluses. My gut says Barrios is going to be better. I'm going to take Navoa, though, because he's 18 years old. Feel like he might end up being better, maybe a higher chance of being that better player. From there, Joey O'Neill is the only other yellow bar. It'd be another starting pitcher, but he's 19, ready in 4+ years. We might as well take him. A lot of selections in this draft. We're in round 5. And from here, it's who the hell knows, basically. We're going to go off of age more than anything. Actually, let's go off of ETA. So let's see. Ready next year, allegedly. 18-year-old Juan Murillo, Peter Isaacs as well. Eric Luna at first. Interesting. So who do we have here? Obviously starting pitching. We're not concerned at all. Catching-wise, it might be worth to take another catcher. First base, I mean, we're solid. Second base, we still have Graham Edwards. We might lose him relatively soon, but we do still have Henry Lewis in the system, Joe Quinlan as well. I mean, not to mention being able to move people over, as it is Marlins playing third. So, infield-wise, Eric Luna might not be the worst pick. Might not be the worst pick at all. And we got a couple of outfielders, which we could use a little bit of a boost to the outfield as well. We've been graduating players recently. Let's go. There's only one infielder I want to take, or that I'm really interested in. That's Eric Luna. So we're going to take him, and we'll look for either a catcher or an outfielder with this next pick, depending on who's still there. And Vernon Francisco is going to be the pick, clearly. So, welcome aboard. We'll take Vernon Francisco, and that is it. A very busy draft as we have that 30-30 record. Let's see how we did, and it's looking somewhat promising. Now, Dennis Ross is 20 and only a 55, high B potential. I'm not convinced he's ever going to develop, but obviously we'll sign him if we can. Cash flow looks to be concerning. Anaya is phenomenal. He's basically MLB ready now, and certainly will be within a year. 21 years old to 75, 90 potential. We'll sign him up. He'll play one season down in AAA. Frank Poirier, also pretty damn good. He's 23, but could fight to be a reliever at some point. Carter Smith, we'll still sign him, but I don't expect him to ever be Major League caliber. Same with Enriquez, we'll sign him. Don't expect him to be Major League caliber. Delman Lint, unfortunately, is a D potential guy, but we'll still sign him to boost up AAA. Navoa, again, not bad for a C potential guy. And Jody O'Neill, we'll sign him for now to boost up the minors, but nothing too crazy. Eric Luna is probably going to be the one guy that we avoid. Maybe. I might just sign him anyway. You know, I'm going to sign everybody here. But yeah, we kind of swung and missed. Outside of Vernon Francisco, not going to sign him. At least Luna can be decent depth for a season. Overall, not an amazing draft for us despite all the extra picks. But I think that's to be expected, more than likely. So we'll scroll through here. I'll be looking for any familiar names like Tackett, who would have been a decent pickup. Kevin Borowitz as well. Let me know if I miss anybody. But I'm mainly going to be looking at names as opposed to even looking at potentials or overalls to look at players that I was tempted to pick, like Mark Otsuka, who is not all that bad. Adrian Barrios ended up being a 76 potential. So nothing too crazy there. James Dillard, the catcher. The Jamaican, was he? Indeed. 62 overall. Not too bad. Jesus, James Decker with that 97 potential. Said I wasn't looking, but even, I mean, that caught my eye for obvious reasons. Just absolutely ridiculous. Good old Ryan Lyle was an 89 potential. Not a crazy starting overall. The Herschel McGinnis, by the way. Okay. It's an interesting name, is all I'll say. Kevin Collier, not bad for a C potential guy in terms of starting overall. Do we have anybody else? Coates, 48. 48. That is rough. Johnny Light. Just a solid name. Oh, Brad Nix, by the way. Would have been a pretty good pickup. Enos Lim ended up being decent, but he's 22. And shout out to Tommy Lee. Anybody else here of note? Not entirely sure. Not really seeing any names that I'm overly interested in. As always, let me know in the comments if there is someone whose overall you would like to see. I will check that for you and get back to you one way or another. But overall, not our best draft by a long shot, but I still feel like we did relatively okay. The main concern, yet again, with the main squad, we are 6 games back as of the draft, and something has to change. We're going to end things here for the sake of my voice. we are back on track as far as upload consistency is concerned, or at least I hope. Thank you for watching and still supporting this series. It is greatly appreciated. Again, the goal is simple. Win something with the Reds. Will this be the year? Right now, it's looking like no. But we still have a long way to go.